Hello, welcome to Mark Langley's Horsemanship Podcast, a podcast helping people to understand their horses better, to provide solutions in a calm, connected way. I'm Jenny Barnes.
And I'm Mark Langley.
Hi, Mark. So I've got some questions this week which are all about riding. And the first question is from Laurie. She is asking how you can give an equine a job for a sense of purpose, as well as engage them mentally and physically. She has a 7.5-year-old mule who has a solid foundation. She rides 3 to 5 times a week and mostly focuses on foundation things like seat connection, up and down transitions and turning. But she's feeling like it might be getting a little bit stagnant for him, and she would like to give him a job to engage him mentally and physically, besides possibly buying some cows. Do you have any idea on how to give him a job with a purpose?
Well, the first thing I'd sort of comes to mind is everything you do, assess everything you're doing already, because I see a lot of horses that ride in an arena and they start to, just doing a similar thing each day, whether it's in or out of arena, whatever. But a horse that shuts out all those things, that starts to just get that learned helplessness or just stop searching, sometimes it can be, I would call it micromanaging, but it's unfair to call everything micromanaging. But sometimes when we do too many things trying to educate our horses to be better and softer, is we start to take over a little bit. And it's very important through the learning process, especially some different breeds, and I'm guessing mules especially can sort of fit into that sort of stoic category, like like some of the halflingers and things like that can sort of, they're very resilient, and they can sort of weather quite a bit of stuff and pressure. So the super alert horses, like say an Arab, is constantly searching all the time and constantly sort of, seeing little things, and there's always a bit of not adrenaline, but anxiety running through it. And that sort of keeps that horse ticking over, where others can sort of go, yeah, I'm pretty cool with everything. And then the thing with that I'm pretty cool with everything scenario is that it makes us start to work for what we're getting, as in we start to put the legs on more, we're starting to sort of control them more from, and then all of a sudden we start to override and take over. And then next minute our horse is just going, I'm just moving away from pressure. I'm just moving away from pressure. And they stop moving towards their thoughts. And it's so easy to do. As I say, it's harder with some breeds, easier with others. And I'm guessing I've not had a huge lot of time with mules, as in lots of mules, but I'm starting to sort of deal with them a little bit more now, and donkeys. But it's given them a sense of purpose, like you said in the question. You want a sense of purpose. So when you're riding, I want you to sort of maybe let go every now and again, and just let your mule get a little lost, and just lost, and start to go, well, I wonder what she wants. She hasn't done anything for a little bit. I might wander over there, and then start to figure out ways where you can rearrange the furniture. That's a figure of speech I use. If you were sort of walking through a household you didn't know and it was kind of dark, you'd just work your way around the furniture, and there's a wall there, there's a door there. Okay, I go through that door and I go through here, but you're constantly thinking your way through that scenario. And that's what I like to sort of set up in when I'm riding is, if the horse finds that straight line that I kind of wanted, well, I'll let it go along there. And if the horse, in your case, a mule, goes off to the right a little, I allow it to go right a little, and I say, yeah, but that's not available. And I'll put a little feel there and say, go this way. And I'll always go back to a scenario where they've got to search their way through a situation. I'll pick up a feel on a rein. And if I want a soft backup, for instance, I'm walking along, I'll pick up the feel on the rein. I'll pick up the feel and I'll see, and I'll only hold a really light feel, and I'll wait just a little longer, and I'll see if they engage with that feel and go, yes, I know what you want, I'm ready. And then I'll pick up more of a backup. But I'm not just going to go, I'm going to back up, because sometimes you can start to think over time, you start to ride the educated animal, the educated mule, and you start to forget how you educated them, how you got them there. And a lot of times, sometimes that is through them searching. And I guess what I'm saying is, instead of picking up and going back up, right, now let's do a transition over here, you pick up and test. And if you and they go, hang on a minute, you can ask for backup, and you see what they do. And if they're a bit dull and you feel that you've got to sort of get in and firm up a little, well, you might firm up a little bit, then you loosen up and say, now let's try that transition again. And test if they're searching into the reins, searching into the left-right rein, and they're searching through situations. And so I'm guessing I'm going loosen on the reins and let them drift out a little, don't offer them so much help, and then let them search and see where they want to be, and then go back in, rearrange the furniture, get them back underneath you again, and then let them out again. And that's a way to get them thinking a little bit in a sort of more stale, stagnant environment. Using your reins and your legs in a way that is more like a boundary, opposed to constant pressure pushing on the horse, making it go in a certain direction. If you can understand that, then you ride a little more like that with them. The other thing I'd start to think about is, people use obstacles to get a horse engaged. So to engage your mule, I'd say, put some things out there, go out like that. I used to love educating horses out in the paddock and out through different situations, because there's so many things to think about. Now, the good thing about things to think about, it brings a little bit of awareness and anxiety up. So think of it like this, is if you're just in your comfortable environment, okay, here's a scenario. If you're in a very comfortable environment and you're like, oh, I didn't get enough sleep last night. Oh, gee, I've got to go out in the garden and do a few bit of weed and a bit of mowing. I'm so tired. I'm just so sleepy. Oh, and you're daydreaming and you're just not really going very, it's just everything's a bit of a chore, and you just feel like you go and have a sleep on a couch or something. And then all of a sudden your whole environment changes around you, and you're in some war-torn country. I'll guarantee you won't be thinking about the couch. You'll be back in like high alert, going, holy cow, crikey, I'm awake now. And all of a sudden you'll have so much energy, you won't know what to do with it. So what taking a horse out in new environments does is it wakes it up, because it brings back that natural anxiety of awareness and what are those things over there, and it gets them searching. And then suddenly your tools become a pathway for help, and then it's going to think forward, and what's that over there, and then you slowly use your environment to just gently wake your horse up and or your mule up and search and do different things like that. And as I say, if you want to set obstacles up, so they can think about where their feet are, what they're climbing on, what they're climbing over, open and shut a gate, put a little purpose to everything that you're doing, and that always really helps. But as I say, the most important thing is, no matter what you're doing, if you're micromanaging your horse, like I had a horse, like examples of my best things is of a horse, and it was a fairly well-trained horse that had played polo cross, and it had been worked up to work cattle as well. So, you could take a rein and it would spin, and it would you'd just sit there quietly, and it was still anxious. It was bouncing around. But if you loosen the reins on it and just asked it to follow a rein or just walk a straight line, it couldn't do it to save its life. And I tried to show the owner, I said, I can ride it that way that had been trained, which I knew, which was, legs and spurs on, rounded up. And I said, look, I can take this horse and ride it around in this circle and make it look like this. But as soon as I loosen up and say, you search, the horse didn't know what to do. And basically what it always wanted to do was just go back to the gate. It never learned to tip its worry out. So micromanaging it was super light and obedient to pressure, but light in a fragile way. It was evading pressure, but it would ride between your hands and your legs very obediently, but take any of that boundaries away and it'd just fall apart. But it wasn't, I'm just saying it wasn't happy in between my legs and reins, and with no guidance, it just said I was always destinating. So when you ride in a normal environment without stimulation, you still have to ride in a way that your horse is engaging, or your mule's engaging with the things that you're asking it. Thinking forward, thinking left, thinking right, thinking backwards, all those sort of things. And that's so important if you could really, look at that and address that.
Just quickly, how important is it for a horse to have a sense of purpose? Is it okay that they actually just have a really good ride and, have that connection with the rider? Is that sufficient? Or do you think they actually do like and need to have a job to do?
Well, by the sounds of it, the other thing I didn't really address in the question is riding 3 to 5 times a week. Maybe sometimes give your horse, your mule, a bit more time off in between. Maybe go 4 days without a ride and then a bit of a ride, and just change that up a little bit too. But I think a horse, if you're engaging with them, they have to be sort of soft and engaged with you, and and a sense of purpose for some is better. Some cope really well without as much purpose. They're constantly, as I say, their mind's always on the go and they're always thinking, whereas others, sometimes it's better to give them something to think about a bit more often. So there's a bit more stimulant in there, because they're very, they're not worried by a lot of stuff going around, and the environment doesn't stimulate them a lot. So they need a bit more to sort of keep them thinking and interested. It's just a bit harder. And yeah, some like there are horses that I have at clinics that have been really dulled. And one horse I remember some years ago in the Kangaroo Valley, it was a kind of a trail riding horse, but really heavy, would not go to the legs at all. And in an arena, I thought, I could pull any tool out of my toolbox, and I reckon I'm going to have trouble. And I didn't want to go to flogging a horse with a stick to make it go forward. And that's not my thing, just to go to bigger pressures until the horse becomes obedient. So I said, okay, well, it's fairly green, but I think I trust it. And I wouldn't tell everyone to do this, but I took it way down the paddock. So it had a big, long paddock, and it was going to go for home. And everybody, don't go and gallop your horses home. This is what you taught as kids. Don't run your horses for home. This was a decision from me to do this with this horse. And I said, got right down there, and I said, go. And I let it, and I got it up to gallop, and I let it gallop full tilt as fast as I could get it to go, until it got to the top and went, whoa, geez, I've just had the wind put up me there. And then it went, I know what legs mean. That means go. And that was the only way I could get that horse to get a forward thought off the legs, because it'd been so, just hammered. And after a few times of that, it said, oh, I didn't realise legs meant go. I just thought they were kicking me.
Yeah.
And because it never really got to go. And that was just a sense of legs are a go-to. And I had to gallop the horse for home in a way that made it feel like it was really going, and get the adrenaline through it and say, this is really forward and I'm going forward, to get the life back in it and desire to go forward. And that's the thing. Sometimes you've got to set a situation up that they feel like there's something in it for them. And that's the thing, is trying to set it up so they're getting something out of it. And that right. It makes, but mind you, there's no artist that's not a good artist without being creative. So
yes,
I think a creative horse person is a good horse person.
Fascinating. Okay. So sticking with the riding, Hermione's got a question. She's doing transitions with the rein aids. What's the best way to transition from the rein aid with a loose contact to into contact? Is it a matter of gradually taking up the rein to making sure a brace doesn't re-enter? And what also would you watch for?
This is actually a good question, Hermione, on the back of the mule question, because the answer is going to be it's a rearranging the furniture lesson. So when you're picking up on the reins, you pick up on a feel of a horse, and that light feel when the bit just starts to, like, the reins just start to touch on the bit, and it just starts to touch on their mouth. And that is the feel that says, are you listening? Some people could call that a half halt, whatever you wanted to call it. But it's basically, have you let go of anything out there? Are you letting go of that? And are you ready to listen? And that little bit of feel there, a lot of horses, if you don't pull any further than that, they will wriggle, some will push, some will actually engage with it. So if you pick up that light feel and they start to wriggle and push, they'll push, and you just firm to their push. So they're testing the boundary of it. So instead of bringing the boundary to the horse and asking it to back up, for instance, you're picking up the feel, and they start to search into that boundary and wonder about it. So basically, they feel the feel. If they push into a boundary. Now, that's your choice how you set the boundary. If you want to make it electric shocks and scare the life out of your horse and put brace in it, well, you do that. If you want to make a horse sort of responsible and not want to go there but still realise it's not too scary, then you do it like that. So how you set the boundary is how frightened the horse might potentially be of the reins. So you have to be careful of that one. So depending on the level the horse's sensitivity, like, talking about a mule earlier on, as in another podcast, was less sensitivity versus an Arab horse that might have more sensitivity in certain areas. So just pick up the feel. If it's a really sensitive horse, it's wriggling a lot and super sensitive, then just let it kind of find its kind of, balance in there, just wriggling until it just quietens a little. And if it pushes a little, you just hold firm a little, so it pushes and feels that boundary, and it loosens a little. And then it finally just starts to come and soften up and come backwards. If it's a horse that you pick up the reins and nothing happens, you might just pick up a little more feel. If nothing happens, you pick up a little more and the horse searches. But when it starts to search, don't pull any more, because that's just going to make it think forward and back its feet like you're pushing it back, like a billy cart with square wheels kind of thing. So you just pick up and you might firm up. But the idea is the horse goes, I feel that pathway, but it finds its own boundaries. The boundaries aren't coming towards the horse. And then eventually it kind of softens and figures it out. So you basically pick up the feel, horse pushes, you firm up enough, gets a change, the horse loosens up, steps back a little, you release and say thank you. And you just keep working on that. For the really dull horses, then you might add another stimuli. Now, the legs you've got to be a bit careful with. So basically you pick up the light feel on the reins, so it feels almost if it was a horse that didn't understand it could walk forward. You add a little leg pressure and the horse will go, oh, what's that? Leg pressure, I'm going to go forwards. And as it pushes into that feel that you picked up, you take a little more feel and say that's a boundary, step back. So, but it's very important in that situation that you take your legs off as soon as the horse starts to move its feet. You don't just keep bumping it into the pressure. And then what will happen is they'll push into the pressure, go, oh, hang on a minute, and then they'll release and back up a little. And that's how I'd sort of teach them to sort of come up into that feel, so they start to find the feel and follow the feel. But the sensitivity of the horse all depends on the boundary. So like a heavy horse, you can get a little firmer and say that's not available. So they don't want to keep going there, but you don't want to make it frightening that they actually got to hide from the pressure. If you just come in with boundaries all the time, and a lot of horses I meet at clinics have been bumped all the time and jagged and bumped, and they are super light in your hands, so light that you can't feel them, but they're actually so out of balance because all they're trying to do is hide from the bit. So you've got to allow them push and explore that boundary and figure that out themselves, but not be frightened of it. So it's a fairly careful conversation with sensitive horses, but also not so sensitive horses, because if the conversation's not right, they'll become sleepy and very dull to it and carry a lot more brace. But yeah, if that sort of gives you some ideas, and you're rearranging the furty, so they test the boundaries and then they find the feel and then they follow it.
Okay, and Jakara has been doing some trot transitions with her horse, and she's noticing that he does become heavy in the reins. She thinks he gets increasingly, his worry gets increasingly greater as she's doing them. So she can still stop him, but he gets heavy. So she's wondering, when he gets like this, do you keep doing trot transitions and hope that he can relax into it, or should she go back to just doing basic stuff that he knows, like turns and backups, until she can get him soft again, and then ask for another trot transition?
I like your questions, Jakara, because you're actually thinking about the answers before you ask the question, which is good. It shows you've thought about what you should be doing and shouldn't be doing, or possibly. So I'd say the second scenario would be a better scenario. And saying that, I kind of know him, and I know if he's going faster than his processing speed, and I also know where you're at with him too. So I'm not going to ask you to do something more than you're able at this stage to do with him. At this stage, I say, as because you don't want to, as you say in your words, eat dirt, from him spooking out and doing something like that. So what I would say is, if you did the first scenario, there is a chance that you can travel with that horse until they kind of relax themselves down a little bit and find their mojo in their trot. But it's a chance, and it's a chance that could go wrong if he suddenly gets a little spooky or rushes, and you've got to use the reins more, because the more you use the reins and not soften him, the more he learns to brace on the reins. So you want to give him and yourself the best possible chance to 100 times you pull the reins, 100 times he softens kind of thing, instead of 50-50 all the time. So if you thought, because in any arena environment, you know, you let them go, and if you let them go on a loose rein, like, you know, when some trainers say, you know, just be a passenger and just let them go. Well, some horses can go faster, and then they spook out and they get more rattled, and then all of a sudden you're back to square one, but square one is further behind than what it used to be. So scenario 2 of just let him trot and bring him back is probably a better scenario. So what I would do is I'd work on, and you've sort of seen me, and I'll explain to everyone else that I do a lot in the walk transition. So the first trot is very soft. So they kind of go up and they go, oh, I'm just going to think a soft trot, and they think a soft trot. And then you do that over and over and over. And then basically he thinks a soft trot, but before he gets worried, you just gently intervene. Instead of him getting worried and come back again, that could be a problem. So you intervene early. You either take him on a turn, slow him down, do another little transition in the walk, some turns, some backups, little things like that, and then find a loose trot again. And before he gets anxious, interrupt his thought. And then slowly but surely, you might increase the length of that trotometer every time. And just unbeknownst to him, you're just sneaking him out a bit further and a bit further. And you might find that over time, he might just give you 20 metres, 40 metres, up to 100 metres. But I think because of him, his processing speed gets overloaded all the time because of his past. For everyone else, this horse has had a bit of a history where he's been put under pressure, but he carried so much worry about all the things going around him. He just became very bracy and, you know, spooky and run off sort of thing. But when you walked up to him, even to catch him and walk down his sides, you know, he'd be nervous, like you're going to do something bad to him. So he was carrying a rider, not only scared of his environment, but also scared of having a rider on him. So Jakara's done a great job. Like last clinic, he was so soft on the ground. I'd never seen him like that, and he was a complete different horse. But so his processing speed now, he's coping with getting saddled, people around him, getting on him, walking him around. But now the next level is trotting him out and processing everything and carrying the rider at the same time. So back to you, Jakara, what you're doing is you're grading that exposure in the trot. So like grading a road, you put so much soil out and or road base, and you grade it out, and then the truck dumps some more and you grade it out. So you put out so much trot, but before he gets worried, you just bring him back to something he's comfortable in, and then put out a bit more trot until you can he puts more trot out without getting anxious. So yeah, that second idea was a better idea, but interrupt him before he gets anxious, opposed to letting him get anxious and then do the transition.
Yes, fantastic. Wonderful. Great to hear from you, Mark. Thank you very much for your time once again, and we will talk to you very soon. You can learn more from Mark online through his online training videos. Just search Mark Langley Horsemanship. There's over 380 training videos which everyone has access to with a 7-day free trial. If you like what you see, it's just $15 a month from there. That's help where you need it.